Leia Healthcare, looking after you always. Proud sponsors of Real Health with Carl Henry.
Hello and welcome to Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. Folks, Christmas has been and gone, and I hope you've had plenty, but not too much, turkey, ham and stuffing, and been able to put your feet up and enjoy some well-earned downtime. We're nearly done with 2020 and can put it all behind us. But before we do, for this week's episode, I want to do another of my life lessons interviews, and this time I'm joined by one of Ireland's best-loved broadcasters, someone who has, it seems, been on our screens and airwaves for as long as I can remember. I remember when I was a child watching him on the Den with Zig and Zag and Dustin, and he's gone from there to TodayFM and back to RT on radio and TV on Saturday nights, and with a relaunch then as well. Ray Darcy, I'm really looking forward to this one. Welcome to Real Health.
Carl, thank you very much. This is a role reversal thing. I'm usually asking you the questions, so it's probably a bit weird for both of us.
It's a bit quirky. I'm slightly nervous, but however. I actually heard, I was listening into your show today and I heard something which I never knew about you, and I'm going to start there. The FCA. You were chatting to a girl doing a quiz earlier on, and you said to her, I used to be in the FCA and I did the nighttime watch or whatever she was just going on to. Let's start there. I never knew you were in the FCA.
Did you not? Right. Well, I'm from Kildare town. My dad was in the army. He was a quartermaster, and the quartermaster was the person with the most influence in the army, despite he would be a lower rank than captains and commandants and generals and all that sort of thing. And the reason he had so much influence was because he was the man who gave out the boots and the uniforms and the shirts and ties and the combats. So, if he ever wanted anything done, somebody would sidle up to him and say, Ray, have you got another beret? Because he was called Ray as well. Anyway, a big thing in Kildare town was the FCA. It's called the LDF now, the Local Defence Forces. And I'm sure I can say this now because it's 40 years on or more than 40 years on. But it was common practice, and I'm not saying that I did it, but it was common practice to change your baptismal cert because you had to be 17 to get in. And of course, everybody knows that it's illegal to tamper with your birth cert. So we all paraded up to the local parochial house and got our baptismal certs. And then there were these pencil rubber type things they were halfway between an eraser and Tipp-Ex. And you were able to, and then you'd change, say my birth date is 64. So you change the 4 to a 1. And suddenly, instead of being, 14, you were 17 and you were old enough to be in the FCA. So that's how it went. And it was, at the time, it was actually very, it was a good thing to be doing money-wise, because you'd have a winter camp, you'd have an Easter camp, and then you could get up to 6 weeks during the summer, and then you'd have those 24-hour guards you were talking about there, and you get, 30 quid or whatever for them. So, there was myself, my brother Joe, who's the oldest in the family, and Hugh, who's 1 year below me. We were all in the FCA, and there's a famous picture of us in the back garden, all in our uniforms, in our green coats or long coats, and we all have our hand in, like Napoleon. So it's the 3 Napoleons is the caption that my mother has in the family photo album. But it was great crack, and I rocketed up the ranks. I was a sergeant in the FCA, believe it or not. I don't think I was old enough to be in it. I think I was still sort of a few weeks shy of 17, and I was a sergeant. So I was in charge. We shot everything. We fired machine guns, we fired 303s, FNs, anti-tank weapons, 25-pounders. It was mad stuff. Great crack though.
And how does one go from that then to DJing, to radio, and getting into that line of work? And was the FCA RBY something that you wanted to get into as a career?
Not really. No, I suppose I tried my hand at everything. And it was the same in sport. I tried everything. I did everything from badminton, gymnastics, Gaelic football, hurling, rugby, squash. I tried my hand at everything. And similarly, if there was any work going anywhere, I'd put my hand up for it. So, for example, I helped, at 9, I had a paper round. Then I worked in a local grocery. I worked in a local drapery, delivered milk, FCA. Then DJing was sort of just another job along the way. But funnily enough, when I started DJing then, I was 15, started doing 21st. The very first disco I did was, my brother was in UCD, and he shared a house on Lower Kilmacud Road, about a mile from where I live now. And he told the rest of them that his little brother was a DJ, which was a lie at the time, because I had the gear, but I'd never DJed in my life. So he had said that he was doing loads of discos around Kildare. So I arrived up with the gear, and it was very rudimentary gear now. There was no, anyway, it's a long story, but very rudimentary gear. And I did the disco. And anyway, that particular night, there was a girl there and she started giving me the eye. I was 15, you know, and all these people were, you know, late teens, 20s. They were in UCD. Anyway, so I was every time I looked up from the decks, she was there. It was in a sitting room, like in a semi-D on Kilmacud Road. And then she asked me to dance. And I said, I don't know if I can, I'm working, you know. And then my brother spotted this going on and he had a few jars in him and he got completely jealous. So I was slow dancing with her anyway. Go over and change the record, put another slow dance on, go back and start dancing with her. And then he got up a bit drunk and he said, if you don't let me dance with her, I'm going to tell her you're only 15. So I think I walked her home that night and I thought, oh yeah, this DJ, it's good crack. So that's where it all started. 1979. Genie Mackers, 1979.
Do you remember the first song you played?
I don't actually. I remember the first song I played on TodayFM. It was The Best Things in Life Are Free by Luther Vandross and Janet Jackson. And I remember the first song I played when I came back to RTE, which was Nina Simone. Somebody to Love. It's the Bee Gees song, her version of the Bee Gees song. So I do remember those, but I don't remember the first song I played at a disco.
So you studied psychology in Trinity. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, you see, I was in hospital when I was 10 and I wasn't sick. It was 1974. I had a bit of a rash, which wouldn't go away. And the local doctor sent me for a referral to a dermatologist and he brought me into Vincent's. Now, Vincent's was a brand new hospital at the time. It was, pristine clean. And I was a 10-year-old and I wasn't supposed to be there really because I should have been in Temple Street or Crumlin, but because I wasn't that sick, they put me in this hospital. So it was a pristine clean hospital full of adults and I was a novelty. And not only for the other patients, but for the nurses. So and then the doctor who was supposed to be looking after me went on holidays for 2 weeks. So I ended up in there for 3.5 weeks. Ridiculous. Like didn't even have the rash because as it turns out, the rash was from the sun. So it was in the middle of November and I was there for 3.5 weeks. Anyway, I sort of fell in love with the whole medicine thing and I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And it stayed like that really up until I got the offer from, the CAO offer. And I was 1 point short, I think, of medicine. At the time, there was no tradition of repeating in our school. So I think second was communications in what was then NIHE. And then psychology was number 3 or number 4 in Trinity. And that was because my aunt was a psychologist and we had a vice principal who said to me one day, Mr. Darcy, you have a great understanding of the human condition. Did you ever consider doing psychology? So little did he know he was going to have so much influence over my life. Well, maybe not. So that's how I ended up in psychology.
Okay. And then so psychology into media and into presenting, what was the big moment or was there a particular...
It wasn't sort of like that. It was in parallel. I was, at 15, when I was doing the local discos and all that, I worked on local radio stations, pirate radio stations, like everything from Radio Winter Kildare, which was in Naas, to WKRC, which was in Newbridge. KLB was in Newbridge as well. So I sort of caught the bug when it came to radio. And at some stage along there, maybe when I was in college, I said to myself that if I didn't get some sort of a career in the media by the age of 30, that I would, concentrate on what I was doing. So I worked in what I suppose what you call youth training for a few years in Anco, which was the predecessor of FOSS. So I worked on what they used to call them community response programs. So they were where they took people from the Leaving Cert and they, as well as doing life skills training with them, we also did a project in the locality. Like in one of them, we indexed parish registers. Another one, we published a local business sort of directory. So I did that for a few years and still doing the DJing around the place and applying for various things, sending in demos to, 2FM and Energy in Dublin, no success. And then Joe Maxey came along and it was the first time that RT asked people to send in videos because before that, nobody would have had a video camera, but there was a few of them around. So you had to send in a video, 5-minute video of yourself with your CV. And so you could hire video cameras from the local Extravision or video shop. And I brought it home, set it up at home, and it didn't work. So I thought, that's it. It's not meant to be. And then my mother or my girlfriend's mother, I can't remember which, said, you should go for it. So there's a local guy named Dominic Heavey. He was in the Red Cross. He's a paramedic in America now. And then outside of the video shop, he was the only guy who had a video camera at the time. Remember, it was 1988. So I got him into the local daycare centre, and we shot something off and sent it up to RTE. And at the time then, with the CV, I thought to myself, like, everyone's going to be doing weird and wacky and zany things with their CVs because it's young people. So I said, I better do something. So instead of putting it on A4, I put it on double size, A3. And then it was one page, and then I highlighted the headings, primary school, a lot of photos, not much else, blah, blah, blah. And then instead of folding it up nicely, I sort of crumpled it up a little bit, sort of irregularly folded it, right? So expecting that everybody would be doing something like this. So when I eventually got the interview, I arrived up and into this room where I was confronted by 3 or 4 people, producers from RTE, and they had a stack of all these perfectly bound CVs. And there was mine sticking out corners everywhere and highlighted bits. And right, so that probably worked. So there you go. So I got Joe Maxey then. And that was a brilliant, foundation. It was better than doing any communications course because you got to do every aspect of television. And at the time, they were still editing on film, believe it or not. They're still editing on 16mm film. So I got in. There was a guy called Maliki, a brilliant film editor in RTE. I got to sit with him. We did studio things with AudioQ. We did reports. You got to interview, half celebrities. I remember we had Jack Charlton in at the time. That was big news. We went to London and we interviewed a girl band. They were sort of a punk pop band. They were called We've Got a Fuzzbox and We're Going to Use It. Now, so I was in Hyde Park or something, running around interviewing them. But anyway, what I'm saying, over 2 years, and because it was 5 days a week, it was a great. It was like a condensed training course in television. And if you cared to learn, you could learn anything because it was all there to learn.
And do you have a preference now for one or the other? So there's TV or radio, or you love both?
I actually love both. There was a time there that if you had asked me that, I would have said radio without a hesitation. But now I've grown to love TV as well. So they're obviously very different, as you know, but they both have different things that are very attractive. Like live television, there's something about live television. I've never done drugs, but I would imagine doing live television is akin to doing some sort of drug. I don't know what it is. It's probably the drug of television, because there's something just like it does weird things to you. Like it expands time and it contracts time, and it increases your heart rate, obviously, and you find yourself oddly, nearly performing out of your skin. It's because you're in a heightened sense of awareness. Now you couldn't maintain that on radio 5 days a week because you'd be in an early grave. But when it's once a week on television, you can probably manage it.
And I ask anyone this who works in the public eye, how do you handle the pressure of it? Whether it's a band or a presenter, or I'm always intrigued by people's processes. So, and the answers are always very varied.
Yeah. I suppose, I don't know. Like Ireland's a very small country. It's a tiny country. Oh, yeah. And like really, you could count on one hand the people who are true, like celebrities. The rest of us, my favorite description is half well known. So I'd say I'm half well known. Now, and the brilliant thing about Ireland is that being half well known opens up so many doors to you. And I don't mean queuing for a nightclub of a Friday night. I mean, just you could find yourself in anywhere in the country and people will have a chat with you, and they'll have an intimate chat with you, and they'll share their intimate details. And that's a great, for want of a better word, privilege. It's great, like to have that. So I like, and I'm not, we don't go out much. Jenny and I don't go out much. We keep to ourselves. It's never been much of a problem. Like the only thing that gets you is that, the odd time you're going to get it in the neck. That's inevitable. When you do something like I do, you're going to get it in the neck, and more so now with social media. But you have to take that. You have to take the good with the bad, and move on and be sort of philosophical about it.
And do you think that's down to, I suppose, experience in terms of, you've had a big career that you can step back and be slightly philosophical if someone if there's a bad review or you have a bad day or whatever?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, and then you're getting older as well. You're more comfortable in your skin, and you don't take things as seriously as you used to. You still work as hard and you still pay attention to the fine detail and all those things that are hugely important in the job. But you just you take it for what it is. It's like I sent a text during the week to somebody, and it's words that I've often put in text. It's only telly, and that doesn't that doesn't take from the amount of effort that people put into it. It's just what it is. It's only telly, and you can say that to somebody who's 25, and they'll nod, but it doesn't sink in. But when you get a bit older, you go, oh, yeah, you're right. And things that were said to you by older people as a younger man, you now go, oh, now I see it. Now I see it.
It's a common thread all the way through episodes like this that we do. It's something like, not to over worry and to worry less. And it's always the people who have that experience to look back and they can now say it. And people who listen in often think, how do you worry less? But it's a very common thread all the way through in terms of well-being.
Yeah.
In terms of telly, we can't not chat, and I personally couldn't have this interview without discussing the Den. I'm just dying to know, how do you do it? How do you handle it?
It's actually it's very easy. I remember doing the Den like in the 90s, and I did it for 8 years. And I remember thinking to myself and saying to people I knew and loved that this is a very special time. This will never be repeated. With the view that I wouldn't be too disappointed when I couldn't repeat it, because if you realize you're in something and it's very special, then you're not chasing it. Then that's So I was saying that, and it was very special. And I remember as well saying, and people would say to you that it's like radio and television, which it is, because there's one camera. You don't have to worry about angle shots or camera angles or anything like that. You just do it. Like it's like and we were in this tiniest of studios. There was no cameraman even. Everybody else was outside. And a measure of how relaxed I used to feel and still feel on the Den is the odd time that you'd have to dress up as a woman, for example, or something like that for a sketch we'd be doing. I had to get from the basement where the costume department is in RTE up to the first floor on the other side of the building, right? So I had to go from there up to there. Now, that involved a number of stairwells and a number of corridors. And I had to plot how I would get from there up to there without being seen. Now, I was going to go on national television when I got there, but I was so self-conscious about getting there and being seen by people. But then when I got into the environment of the Den, it's like a different world because it's so relaxed. And like I know Zig and Zag and Dustin so well. And it was born out this time around. It was born out of the lockdown because it just felt like the perfect thing to do. We did RT does comic relief, and it was like we were never away. And then increasingly, as you looked around, programs can't have audiences. People needed a bit of a laugh, bit of silliness, and when you go through the list, the Den sort of fulfills all those functions because we are our own audience. Like, well, I'm the main audience. I just laugh, but so it's. But the sort of strange thing is that we used to do it 5 days a week, 3 hours a day. So all of the things were spread over, and you had 25 minutes of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Animaniacs or Pinky and the Brain or whatever. But now we're doing it in a condensed hour. So like the first evening, I was just like, woo! It was because it is very intense. It's very intense and it's very manic. And there's no downtime. There's no, like, apart from the 2 ad breaks, there's no time to go to check where you are and somebody to come over and say, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. There's none of that. And there's no auto cue. It's just... Now, as you can see, there's no script, obviously, if you've watched it closely. But still, we have to get from A to B.
It's been incredible. Like I've watched, I think, all of them that have come on the last couple of weeks, and I've been transported back to my childhood every single time. So much so that I rang my mum after one of them, and I was like, "Have you ever seen those Zig and Zag teddy bears that I used to have as a kid?" Like, we think they're in the attic. I'm actually going to go up in the attic and check because I have a Zig and Zag book over here that I read to my son every now and again, which is back must be 1993 or 94 or something like that. When I was like, it's been an incredible success. Do you get embarrassed at all by some of the stuff they come out with some of the guests? Like Andrea Corr was on, and obviously with the One Direction fans with Niall Horan and all of that. Do you ever get embarrassed, or do you just go with it?
Yeah, like I suppose part of my job is to be, the parent, the responsible adult in the room. But so I have to say you can't say that, and I do mean it when I say you can't say that. But the more you say that to Dustin, the more likely he is to say the thing you don't want him to say. So sometimes you're better off not stopping him and just let him. He'll get bored and move on.
And he's a thing for Claire Bird at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Look, I've asked him on a number of occasions, and I think he says it with more gusto, or sings it with more gusto every time, because I've asked him not to do it. But there you go.
So she's done the correct thing and stayed silent anyway. She hasn't come out publicly fighting it.
No, she's been very good about it. She's been very good about it. She sent me an email, so she's very good about it.
You're listening to Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. So I want to take this now towards health, and I know you and I have come across, at several events. The last one that I can remember was you did a half marathon in the Phoenix Park, and you had thousands of people at it. So let's chat movement. Let's chat running, health. A, what it does for you, and B, how you got into it, or have you always stayed fit?
No. Like as I said earlier on, when it came to sport, I did everything. I'm just trying to think. My first memory of sport was probably as a 6-year-old doing gymnastics. So my aunt, Ruth, she got involved in a local gymnastics club, and she had no children of her own. So she came and borrowed 2 of my dad's, her brother. So Q, who's a year younger than me, and me, we were dragged off down to the local gym club, and there was a De La Salle brother Mark, and he was the teacher there. Little did I know, and maybe it wasn't like this, but this is the way it has panned out, that we were sort of been used, because my Aunt Ruth must have fancied Brother Mark. And as it happens, they're married with 3 kids now, 3 adult children. So he left the De La Salle brothers and got married to Ruth. So he's now my uncle Nicky, as opposed to Brother Mark. But so that my first memory was gymnastics, and then just everything, like rugby. Started playing rugby about the age of 11. Played soccer, did all the Gaelic stuff, and didn't think too much about it. Like, you don't think too much about it then. Then at 17, I had to make choices about which sport you'd concentrate on, and rugby is the one that you need least talent for. So I wasn't very talented, but I was determined. So I reckon that rugby, yes, with determination and a modicum of talent, you can get a long way. So I concentrated on rugby then, and that's what I played up until 29 or 30.
Wow. Okay. What position?
First centre.
I was a loose head props. You had a lot more skill than I did.
Well, I don't know if I did, but tackling was my main skill. That was funny, because I was when I was about 11 or was it? I was about, no, maybe I was 13, and I went down to see the under-15s play, or it could have been 11. I went down to see the under-13s play. Anyway, I was younger than this crowd. I arrived down on Saturday, and they were 1 man short. So they said, Darcy, you'll go on the wing, thinking there'd be nothing for me to do. So I thought it was going really well, and I was tackling, blah, 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 blah. But at halftime, the referee called me over, and he says, listen, you'll have to make some attempt to tackle them. You can't just lie down in front of them and let them trip over you. So that's what I was doing. I was lying down in front of guys, there were big guys tripping over me, but it sort of worked. Yeah. And
as your career's gone on, you've got fitter, I think would be my own observation.
Yeah,
you're very fit. You run really well.
Yeah, I stopped playing rugby when I was getting personal, because I was on the den and lads were going, tell Zig and Zag about that, and kids were chanting. Kids from the other team were chanting on the sideline, "Get Ray, get Ray." But that's the honest. That guy stood my hand one day and goes, "Tell Zig and Zag about that." So I stopped playing rugby, and then in my 30s, I sort of didn't do much. In my 30s, bit of five-a-side football. And I was on the den. I didn't do much. And then what happened was I was doing a bit of cycling maybe. And then as I approached 40, I'd attempted to learn how to swim a couple of times, and life took over. And then in a sort of a sort of moment of madness the day after the marathon. That particular year was October, and I just went on air and I said, I'm going to learn to swim. And I'm going to do a triathlon by next year because I'm going to be 40. So I'm going to do a triathlon before I'm 40. So I set myself I thought it was achievable, and it obviously was because I did it, but it was tough going. So from October, that would have been the end of October. So it would have been November, December, and then 9 months. So what's that? 11 months. I'd given myself to learn how to swim, not just learn how to swim, but learn how to swim a mile. Anyway, the knock-on effect was that I started running because you have to do the 10K at the end of the triathlon. I just fell in love with it. I never saw the attraction in running. I thought it was boring. You didn't cover enough ground. I just never got it. And then it just clicked then. So I've been running ever since. So that was 17 years ago. So that's it.
And you mentioned marathon running there, and that's kind of forming a big part of the next project that you're involved in for next year.
Well, it isn't. You know, it's not because, like, I would have. So what happened there was, and I'm sure it happens with loads of people. You start running and you go, 5K. Oh yeah, I can do more than that. Then you do 8. Then you do 10K, and you're in the Phoenix Park or someplace, and you're doing 10K, and then you go, what's the next one? Yeah, right. Half marathon. I'd never be able to do a half marathon, and then before you know it, you're doing a half marathon. Jesus, right. So a marathon is just twice that. I could try it. And then you're doing a marathon. There's no big plan or anything. You just sort of stumble into it. That's what happened with me, and I think it happens with a lot of people. And so I did 3 marathons, and then I decided at the last one that I just wouldn't do them anymore because they were. I wanted to continue running, you see, and I didn't want to injure myself doing a marathon or do something that would prevent me from running. So, like I remember going into because when you do marathons, you usually end up with a physiotherapist at some stage. I remember saying to her at one stage, I'd love to be running when I'm 60. And she laughed at me, because not a lot of people can, keep running into their 60s. A lot of people do, but most people don't. So I'm 56 now, and I'm still running. So fingers crossed. You never know though, with injuries. But anyway, so you mentioned that thing, which is probably one of the most special days in my life, and that was the half marathon.
That was an amazing day.
Yeah,
amazing.
Well, it was just like all the stars were aligned, and the gods were shining on us, and the sun was shining on us, and it was just for such an amazing cause. And we had 2,000 people there, and the brilliant thing about that was it was before the real surge in running in Ireland, and most of those people were running a half marathon for the first time. So you have that energy, that nervous energy, and that sense of community that was there. And then you had Jane McKenna, who herself and Brendan set up LauraLynn, and she spoke before the race. And then it was near perfect conditions, maybe slightly warm, too warm. And the people in Phoenix Park were lovely, and it was just one of those moments. And we raised, I think in the end it was over 600,000 for LauraLynn. And since then, things have changed for me. I left TodayFM, different situation in RTE, all of those things. And all through that, anybody I met who did that, like yourself, said it was a particularly special day for them. And, you can't argue with all the people I've met, because people would go out of their way to come over and say, I did that, right? So I'm constantly thinking, is there any way we can do something that's similar to that, blah, blah, blah. And so I run around UCD every morning, and I can see them in my head now. There's about, 5 or 6, maybe 7 people that I see every morning, every morning. And I thought to myself, if I seen them just in this little one corner of Dublin, well, that must be a similar situation in parks and running places all over the country, that people are running every day, and they're probably doing 5Ks or whatever. And then I thought it in my head, and I said, I suppose I do sort of a marathon a week. And so just there then, I finished up, had a shower, came in here, and immediately rang Sarah in LauraLynn. I said, could be September. I have an idea for you. This is it. It does exactly what it says on the tin. People are deprived of organised challenges at the moment because of COVID. A marathon a week for a year. It sounds brilliant, but it's very achievable. And I sort of then explained what it was, blah, blah. Left it with them and thought no more of it. So they were obviously working away, and then sometime in late October, maybe early November, they said, "Yeah, we think we'll do that. We're still up for it." And so we're here now. We're doing it. Ray's Marathon Challenge, and you can break it down, Carol. You know yourself. It's very doable. So you like, I do 4.5 miles 6 days a week, and that suits me. It's just the right distance. Some people might prefer to do a 10 mile at the weekend and, shorten the runs during the week or whatever. You could spread it over 7 days, and that's less than 4 miles. A bit more, it's probably 6K, less than 6K because it's 40 kilometers. So it's very doable, and it's a brilliant cause. I just did the maths, just especially for you, Carol, I did the maths. So we're looking to get 1,000 people, right, to do it. And we're hoping that each of them will raise €500 across a year, which isn't a big ask. So if you were getting, if you go around your mates and your family and you're saying, I did the 26 miles this week, give us a tenner. If you do that every week, you have 500 quid, 520 quid at the end of the year. So that's 500,000. So we're at that magic number again, 500,000. That's great. But if we get 1,000 people and they all do a marathon a week for a year, have you any idea the mileage that will be covered?
Marathon a week for the year. That's 52 weeks, 42K. Oh, no, go on. Give it to me.
Okay, miles. Okay. 1,362,400 miles. Right? That's 24 times around the earth. That's nearly 6 times. No, it's 3 times to the moon and back. That's the type of mileage you'd be doing as a group of people. And that's the brilliant thing about it. It's a group of people. Because I remember the T-shirt for the 500,000 half marathon. It was, I did a half marathon, we raised 500,000. So
yeah, I have it upstairs.
There you go.
Actually should have worn it. I should have worn it for the session. I didn't think about that.
There you go. Look at those for T-shirts.
Hey,
there nice. Look at this. There you go. It's a nice T-shirt.
I like that one.
Nice T-shirt. Yeah, it's a nice T-shirt.
The pink and the white and the blue.
Yeah, it's a nice T-shirt. They're the colours of LauraLynn.
And of course, for this challenge, people can run, they can walk it,
yeah.
They can do a little bit of both if they want.
Yeah.
Any fitness level can take part. Any age can take part. Where can people register and find out more about it?
It's raisemarathonchallenge.ie. Can't be easier than that. raisemarathonchallenge.ie. And everybody be encouraged to go onto Strava. We're going to, Jenny's doing it as well, which is brilliant. We're going to do the odd podcast, maybe interview people like yourself, and just give people encouragement. And you never know, like they're saying now that the vaccine probably won't be to everybody till late in the year, maybe, after the summer. So we're probably not looking at organised events for most of next year, but maybe near the end of the year, we could all get together and do a run. That might be on the cards as well.
Oh, you're teeing that up very nicely. I like that. And of course, think about it, 1,000 people from across the nation is not an insurmountable amount of people when you think in terms of the breakdown of how many people you need to get signed up. So folks, if you're listening in, it is New Year's Eve. You've had a really busy Christmas, I'm sure. You've had a crazy year. Why not register for something like this? It's the perfect challenge for all fitness levels, for all age groups. Anyone can get involved with an amazing community building around it from what Ray is telling us. It's a perfect thing to get involved in. It's raisemarathonchallenge.ie is the website. And do have a look at my own social media. I'll put some stuff up when the podcast goes out for links and swipe up links to raisemarathonchallenge.ie.
Carol, tell them how good the T-shirt is. It's worth the T-shirt.
They're going to see it. Don't worry. You on my Instagram TV, you will see Ray's T-shirt. We'll make a special clip of Ray doing the 360 on the T-shirt, and don't you worry, we'll get him to model it for us. Ray, final question. 2021, what's it going to bring? What's the bar of this big challenge on a personal level? Have you anything in terms of targets, resolutions? Resolutions is a funny word, but in terms of, I suppose, targets is a little bit better.
I don't do resolutions. Like the thing that I've been saying for the last few years that I really want to do is to get more proficient in the sea. And I've been meaning to do that. And a few years ago, I went back and did lessons in UCD. And then again, life took over. So we go down to Dunmore East during the summer. And they have this lovely setup down there. It's like I don't know if you know Dunmore East, but the little beach there, it's sort of very sheltered. And there's just out a bit from it, there's a rock either side of the bay. It could be a bay. And I think it's about 400 meters, maybe 500 meters. And I see people regularly leave one side and swim over and swim back. So they're doing 1,000 meters there, and it looks so effortless. And I would love to have the confidence to do that. So what I end up doing is I go out to a little cove and I spend 20 minutes there. I never go out of my depth, and I swim back and forth. And that's the level I'm at. I'd love to be just a little bit more proficient because I love being in the sea. I'd love to be a little bit more comfortable. What's yours?
Actually, I know that bay very well. The last open water swimming race when I was training for Ironmans was in that bay.
Yeah.
It was a 4K race. It was 2 laps. It was a kilometre straight out, just where the water, just when you got out of the bay, and it was wavy. It was horrific. I'll never forget it. I never swam. It was the first time I got a shock in terms of talk about out of your depth. You finally realise how deep.
Yes.
And I came. It was the best race I ever did because I was so scared. I was such a fright. I pelted back in like the clappers, and I think I came like 12th out of a couple of hundred. It was great. My own one. It's a funny one. It's this year's been really interesting for me. It's been a revelation in terms of balance. I'm still working my rear end off, but actually it's a little more balanced than it was. So my goal for the year, fitness wise, we did 2 marathons during COVID, private, myself and a friend of mine who run.
Right.
This is interesting. You've now flipped it ahead and it's an interview.
Why don't you do Ray's Marathon Challenge?
I think I'm going to sign up for that. That goes without a doubt.
No, because it'd be brilliant.
I would do.
No, but that'd be brilliant because then we can dip into you, so to speak, along the way. You know.
You can consider me signed up for that anyway. That goes without saying. And,
brilliant. Thank you.
I've lots of other tips or plans too.
So anyway, I interrupted you. You go on. I interrupted you. You were about to say.
No, you're grand. I'm trying to think what I was trying to say.
Your resolution or your target for 2021.
Yeah, and I, from a target perspective, is just to keep balance going. I've been at home for the first time in my life ever. I love to work. I'm a workaholic by trade. As a family, we're workaholics by trade. All we ever do really is work. And it's been lovely to be at home for the first time ever with my family, my wife, my son. And more of that is on the cards for the new year.
That's great.
I have to say, I was nervous about this one because it's always funny when you interview people who've interviewed you and who interview for a living. It's a funny place to bring them onto a podcast and have a chat and just to see where it goes. But it's been great to catch up with you properly, and it's been fascinating. We've learned so much about you, as I'm sure our listeners have too, which is brilliant.
Right. So that was enjoyable, very enjoyable.
Folks, if you are thinking about raisemarathonchallenege.ie, we will put a swipe up link on my Instagram page, and in the supporting text that comes with the podcast, we will put the links and the website address and everything in there. On behalf of myself, on Dara and Gav, and by the way, we're going to give a shout out to Gav before the year is over. He's done amazing over the course of the last couple of months. I'm going to embarrass him now. You've never met him, but he's in the background doing sound on all of my podcasts. He's got fit, he's shaped up, and he looks absolutely amazing. So Gav, fair play to you. From all the team here on Real Health, from Leia Healthcare and the Independent.ie, thank you so much for listening in. We have the goal, myself, before the end of the year was to break 3 million in terms of total listens. We've done that. We're at about 3.2 million now, and we've got lots more exciting stuff planned for the new year. So have a wonderful New Year's Eve. Set some targets. You have a brilliant target now in terms of raisemarathonchallenege.ie. Get on board, get signed up, and get one of those lovely t-shirts that Ray modelled for us. On behalf of everyone from Real Health, have a wonderful New Year's Eve, and we look forward to bringing you more Real Health next week. Have a great one. See you soon. Slán.
Leia Healthcare, looking after you always. Proud sponsors of Real Health with Carl Henry.